The dawn in Aurora Citadel broke over gleaming towers and floating platforms, painting the sky in shades of rose gold and sapphire. At the pinnacle of the tallest tower, Queen Angela stood poised, draped in a ceremonial gown, woven with shimmering filaments that reflected the first light. Her emerald eyes scanned the city she ruled, a metropolis of perfection, technology, and power. Every movement she made, graceful, calculated, mesmerizing, revealed both beauty and authority. Yet beneath the elegance, Angela's mind raced. Today, she would walk onto the stage of the Global Beauty and Influence Competition, a spectacle watched by billions through holographic projections and virtual reality systems. To the public, it was a contest of beauty, charm, and performance. To Angela, it was another battlefield, one where intellect, strategy, and subtle influence mattered more than the surface aesthetics. Her reflection in the mirrored walls of the dressing chamber caught every detail: cascading auburn hair, flawless skin, and a posture that exuded quiet dominance. But Angela knew that among the contestants, many would outshine her in conventional beauty. Celine Verne, the media darling with platinum hair and near-perfect symmetry, was already favored by the judges and public alike. Angela smirked faintly. Beauty is only one layer, she thought. Power, influence, and perception could reshape reality entirely, and she had mastered those arts. A soft chime sounded. Harrison Vale, her confidant and advisor, stepped in, dressed in tailored attire that balanced elegance and practicality. Handsome, magnetic, and perceptive, he had been by Angela's side for years, his loyalty unwavering. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice low, carrying both admiration and caution. Angela turned, eyes gleaming. "Ready? Always. But remember, Harrison, tonight, appearances matter only as far as I allow them. The rest is mine to control." In the preparation room, a team of stylists, holographic technicians, and AI assistants worked in perfect harmony. Every strand of hair, every shimmering gown detail, and every subtle gesture had been optimized to maximize presence on stage and influence the judges, both human and AI. Angela's beauty, though striking, was complemented by an aura of authority that few could ignore. As she descended toward the grand stage, holographic spotlights illuminated her path. The audience, both virtual and in person, erupted in applause, yet her focus remained unbroken. Behind the applause, Angela's mind raced, evaluating rival strategies, noting their weaknesses, calculating how to bend rules without breaking them, how to make subtle interventions that would ultimately decide the competition in her favor. Backstage, Celine Verne approached, radiant and confident, offering a practiced smile. "Angela, may the best woman win," she said, though her eyes betrayed a flicker of unease. Angela inclined her head gracefully, eyes sharp. "May the truth of influence and intellect prevail," she replied, the words casual but loaded with hidden meaning. The stage lights shifted, signaling the start. Angela's moment had arrived. Cameras captured her every move. Holographic displays transmitted her image worldwide. Contestants performed dazzling routines, answered questions with charm and wit, and showcased talents refined through years of preparation. Yet despite the applause, Angela's calculated calm set her apart. She was not merely performing, she was orchestrating perception, planting the seeds of influence that would bloom later. As the first round concluded, whispers circulated. Angela's elegance was undeniable. But by conventional standards, Selena appeared to lead. Most viewers assumed victory would go to the public favorite. Few suspected the quiet power Angela wielded. The network of subtle interventions, alliances, and unseen manipulations that ensured the competition's outcome was already in motion. Harrison leaned in as they returned backstage. "They think you're behind, don't they?" Angela's smile was enigmatic. "Let them think what they want." Tonight, beauty may catch the eye, but power catches everything else. Above the glittering stage, above the roar of the audience, Angela Mercer, the queen, the strategist, the unassuming beauty, had set the first move in a game that would test not only appearances, but influence, cunning, and control. And she intended to win, quietly, decisively, and completely unseen, until the final crown was hers. The arena of the global beauty and influence competition was a marvel of 44th century engineering, floating stages, holographic projections stretching across kilometers, and spectators both in person and in virtual reality, their avatars shimmering in ethereal colors. Every detail, from the glint of the audience's augmented optics to the soft hum of energy fields, was designed to amplify spectacle and authority. Angela Mercer descended the grand staircase, the gown she wore glimmering like molten silver, its filaments catching the light as though capturing the stars themselves. Her presence commanded attention, yet she moved with quiet restraint, allowing other contestants to shine first. She understood the optics. Overt dominance could spark envy, suspicion, or preemptive countermeasures. Tonight, subtlety would be her weapon. From across the stage, Celine Verne stood radiant, every strand of platinum hair perfectly in place. Her smile calculated to charm the cameras and judges alike. She was the public favorite, a walking standard, of beauty amplified by charisma, elegance, and relentless media coverage. Contestants whispered among themselves, noting the intense aura Celine projected. Yet Angela, watching from the side, noted cracks others missed. Celine's subtle gestures of tension, the way her gaze lingered too long on the spotlight, her over-reliance on rehearsed charm. Harrison Vale approached Angela, his dark eyes scanning the stage with precision. "Celine's impressive, but not flawless," he said quietly, leaning close enough for only her to hear. "And the judges respond to more than appearance, influence, subtlety, strategic charm. That's your arena." Angela's emerald eyes sparkled, a blend of amusement and determination. "Then let's ensure they notice me on every level they can't measure." The first round began with a display of talents: music, holographic artistry, acrobatics, and rhetoric. Contestants showcased not just skill but personality, each attempting to imprint a lasting impression on judges and viewers. Angela moved deliberately, choosing understated yet perfect gestures, a tilt of her head, a measured smile, a cadence in her speech that conveyed confidence without arrogance. While others sought to dazzle, she embedded influence in every glance, every word, every moment. Backstage, Celine noticed the difference. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she observed Angela's poised calm. "She's composed," she whispered to an assistant. "Too composed. There's something she's hiding." Angela, of course, was aware of being watched. She allowed herself a fleeting smile, knowing the seed of doubt had been planted. Rivals underestimated the queen's intelligence, assuming she relied solely on charm or appearance. Yet every subtle movement, every strategic interaction was part of a larger design, one that would ensure she claimed victory unseen. The next phase involved interactive audience engagement, a test of wit and perception. Contestants responded to live questions, improvising under holographic simulations designed to challenge authenticity, intelligence, and poise. Angela answered with grace, each response calibrated to resonate not just with the judges but with the global audience, subtly influencing public perception. Her answers were never flashy but deeply persuasive, planting ideas in minds that would later shape voting behavior. Meanwhile, competitors faltered under pressure. Celine's rehearsed charm occasionally cracked, her words slightly mechanical. When challenged, others tried to imitate Angela's subtlety, but her mastery of both public persona and private strategy remained unmatched. Even Harrison, observing from the wings, marveled at the seamless blend of intelligence, authority, and understated beauty. As the round concluded, whispers and murmurs spread across the arena. Many viewers assumed Celine led based purely on visual appeal. Few realized that Angela's strategy had quietly shifted the underlying perception, placing her influence far ahead of all competitors in unseen metrics. Backstage, Angela allowed herself a moment of reflection. Harrison approached, offering a hand in reassurance. "The first move is complete," he said. Angela took it, her smile faint but triumphant. "And they still don't know the real game has begun." Above the floating stage, lights pulsed like heartbeat signals. The world watched, believing the contest was about appearance alone. Yet behind the holographic glow and the public spectacle, a queen was weaving a quiet, invisible victory, one that would ultimately ensure her dominance, not only in the competition, but in the hearts and minds of all who witnessed it. The hum of machinery backstage was a quiet counterpoint to the dazzling spectacle on the floating stage. Holographic lights reflected off polished surfaces, casting fleeting shadows that shifted with the movements of technicians, assistants, and contestants. Angela Mercer moved through this world with the grace of a ruler and the focus of a general preparing for a campaign. Here, behind the curtains, the real battle began. Her emerald eyes scanned the activity, assistants calibrating, holographic effects, AI systems analyzing live audience reactions, and competitors fussing with costumes and makeup. To the casual observer, it was chaos. But Angela saw patterns, weaknesses, and opportunities. Each contestant had a flaw, however small, and every flaw could be leveraged if one had the cunning to act. Harrison Vale joined her in the shadows, leaning slightly against a polished console. "You're quiet," he said, voice low. "Usually you command the room. Why so reserved?" Angela tilted her head, a faint smile playing at her lips. "Because words are most powerful when the listener underestimates the speaker. Let them think they've won the stage. The real victory is silent, invisible, and inevitable." Her first task was identifying allies and adversaries among the staff and judges. Many were impartial. Others were swayed by charm, loyalty, or subtle bribery. Angela didn't need to coerce. They simply responded to her aura of authority and intelligence. A nod here, a casual suggestion there, and a network of influence began to weave itself around her. Celine Vierne appeared briefly, gliding through the backstage corridor with practiced poise. She smiled at Angela with a mixture of civility and subtle challenge. "May the best woman win," she said, her voice light, but her eyes calculating. Angela returned the smile, though her thoughts were sharper than any blade. "Indeed, though. The definition of best is always evolving," she replied, letting the ambiguity hang in the air. Every word was a maneuver, planting subtle doubt and curiosity, forcing Celine to wonder where the true threat lay. Next came managing the AI adjudicators and virtual voting channels. Angela accessed her private interface, a sleek device that allowed her to observe algorithmic patterns in real time. Slight adjustments, imperceptible to others, ensured that scoring metrics favored subtle charm, eloquence, and wit, qualities Angela excelled in. She didn't need to win through obvious beauty alone. She would win through layered perception, manipulating unseen forces to tilt the outcome quietly in her favor. A young assistant approached nervously, glancing at Angela. "Your Majesty, should we perhaps adjust the lighting for round 3? Some contestants seem overshadowed." Angela's gaze softened, though her mind remained razor-sharp. "Do it subtly. Let no one suspect the advantage, but let the audience's focus naturally find what I intend. Every detail matters." Meanwhile, rumors of backstage alliances and rivalries swirled. Contestants whispered, speculated, and tried to read one another's intentions. Few noticed Angela's quiet observation, her subtle gestures, and the invisible web of influence she had spun. Harrison watched her like a strategist observing a battlefield. "You make it look effortless," he murmured. Angela allowed herself a brief glance at him. Effortless is perception, the truth, strategy, calculation, manipulation that is hidden, and it must remain hidden until the moment of revelation. Hours passed as the next rounds progressed. Angela moved between monitors, holographic feeds, and private corridors, making imperceptible interventions, nudging the AI to favor certain judges' biases, redirecting camera angles to subtly enhance her charisma, planting suggestions in the minds of influential attendees. By the time she returned to the stage, the groundwork had been laid, invisible yet unassailable. Back in her private chamber, Angela allowed herself a rare, satisfied smile. She was no longer merely a contestant. She was the architect of her own triumph. Publicly, the competition still leaned towards Celine. Privately, the outcome was already hers, woven into the fabric of backstage mechanics, perception manipulation, and quiet dominance. Harrison joined her again, a mixture of pride and anticipation in his gaze. "Soon the world will see the winner," he said softly. Angela's eyes gleamed with determination. "The world will see only what I allow them to see, and they will admire it, unaware that the crown was always mine to command." Above the arena, lights danced and holograms shimmered, a spectacle for millions. Below the spectacle, behind the curtains, Angela Mercer had already begun securing her hidden victory, a victory that would redefine beauty, influence, and power in ways no one could anticipate. The floating arena above Aurora Citadel pulsed with life. Tens of millions of viewers watched through ultra-realistic holographic feeds, while thousands packed the central stage area, their augmented eyes scanning every shimmer, every gesture. The global beauty and influence competition had reached its most critical phase, the public performance. Angela Mercer descended onto the stage, her silver gown reflecting the artificial suns of the arena, casting light across the faces of judges, media, and spectators alike. Her posture was perfect, graceful, commanding, confident. Even those skeptical of her beauty felt the pull of her presence. She was no longer merely a contestant. She was a force of perception, a living embodiment of elegance tempered by authority. Celine. Varn awaited at the opposite side of the stage, radiating flawless beauty, her every move choreographed to captivate both judges and audience. Cameras captured her every smile, her every glance, the subtle arch of her brow. To the casual viewer, she seemed destined to win. Angela, however, had no intention of letting appearances alone dictate the outcome. The first segment required contestants to present a personal narrative, an account of their journey, values, and vision for the world. Celine's story sparkled, effortless charm, stories of achievement, public service, and grace under pressure. The audience applauded, some even rising in virtual ovation. But Angela's story, though quieter in delivery, carried weight. "Ayu have ruled one of Earth's 7 regions," she began, her voice calm and melodic. "Not because of beauty alone, but because leadership demands vision, strategy, and courage. Influence is not in the applause you earn. It is in the change you make unseen." The words were deliberate, precise. Judges recorded not just beauty, but substance. Holographic feeds analyzed audience reaction. AI-assisted scoring systems subtly prioritized her composure, intelligence, and charisma. Angela knew exactly how to balance humility with dominance, charm with authority. Celine's eyes flicked toward Angela mid-speech. There was a hint of doubt, unspoken but unmistakable. Angela allowed herself a faint smile, almost imperceptible. The first cracks in her rival's confidence had begun. Next came the talent demonstration, a segment designed to combine artistry with technological mastery. Contestants presented holographic art, acrobatic displays, and choreographed performances. Celine dazzled with precision and symmetry, earning gasps from the audience. Angela, however, combined subtle illusions with a poised dance of light and motion, creating an impression of effortless mastery that felt personal, almost intimate, to the judges. Backstage, Harrison monitored her subtle manipulations, AI feeds, camera angles, and stage dynamics. Every movement Angela made had been calculated to maximize unseen impact. She didn't need to outperform Celine in flashiness. She only needed to embed her influence in every layer of perception, ensuring that her presence lingered in the minds of all who watched. The final segment was a live Q&A with global leaders and influencers, testing wit, diplomacy, and presence under pressure. Celine answered with practiced charm, but her rehearsed responses occasionally faltered when challenged with unexpected scenarios. Angela responded calmly, weaving authority and insight with a soft smile that disarmed both questions and audience. Assumptions. As the segment concluded, applause thundered across the arena. Media commentators praised Celine for visual impact, while subtle murmurs began circulating about Angela's depth, intelligence, and poise. Behind the scenes, Angela and Harrison exchanged a glance. She had not yet won visibly, but her strategy had begun to shift public perception in imperceptible ways. Harrison whispered, "They still see Celine as the favorite, but your influence is already stronger." Angela's gaze swept across the holographic panels, showing audience reactions, judges' scores, and live analytics. Her voice was barely audible. Influence is silent. Power is invisible. Victory is inevitable. The arena lights dimmed for the intermission, leaving the stage glowing with residual brilliance. Contestants returned backstage, some exhausted, others confident. Celine's confident mask faltered ever so slightly as she caught Angela observing the audience, serene yet calculating. Angela knew the real game was beginning. The public could be swayed, scores could be nudged, and subtle manipulations could secure her triumph without anyone noticing until the final announcement. Tonight, beauty was the illusion. Power and strategy were the reality. Above the glowing arena, the audience marveled, unaware that the queen they saw on stage was quietly orchestrating her own undisputed victory. Backstage, the hum of machinery and the murmur of anxious contestants created a labyrinth of sound that only heightened Angela Mercer's sense of focus. While the world outside perceived glamour, light, and elegance, she moved like a general, surveying her battlefield. Every glance, every whisper, every imperceptible gesture was part of a larger orchestration, a network of influence designed to secure the crown she had quietly claimed before the public could even realize it. Harrison. Vale stood beside her, his sharp eyes scanning the room, noting both allies and rivals. "The public thinks Celine is ahead," he said, voice low. "But we know the truth. Are you ready to move the final pieces?" Angela's emerald eyes gleamed, catching the light like polished gemstones. "The pieces have been ready since I stepped on this stage. Now it's time to weave them into their final positions." Her first move was subtle but effective. She activated private interfaces to subtly influence the AI adjudicators and voting channels, adjusting weights in the scoring system. The alterations were imperceptible, measured in micro-decisions, a slight preference for composure, an emphasis on thoughtful answers, and enhanced weighting for strategic charisma over superficial beauty. No one would notice, yet the effects would ripple across the final tally, silently reshaping the outcome. Meanwhile, Angela moved among the contestants, her presence calm, graceful, and disarming. She offered quiet encouragement to nervous participants, a smile here, a nod there, carefully planting admiration and trust. Allies emerged unknowingly, aligned by subtle gestures, by respect for her composure and insight. Celine Vierne approached, radiant and confident, her eyes flicking toward Angela with something unreadable, uncertainty, masked by a practiced smile. "You've been everywhere," she said lightly. "Do you ever tire?" Angela's smile was faint, almost enigmatic. "Energy comes from knowing the right moves before anyone else does," she replied softly, letting the words carry layers of meaning. Celine's brow furrowed, an unconscious acknowledgement that Angela's calm was no ordinary grace. As the evening progressed, Angela orchestrated stage adjustments, lighting subtly highlighting her gestures, camera angles favoring her natural poise, holographic backdrops enhancing her presence. Each tweak was invisible to the untrained eye, but amplified the impact of her performance. Every decision reinforced the narrative she wanted the world to perceive: charm, intelligence, and an understated authority. In the quiet corridors behind the stage, a junior judge whispered to an assistant, "I don't understand. Something about Angela just feels right. I can't explain it, but I'm noticing her more than anyone else." The assistant shrugged, unaware that Angela had planted the suggestion subtly in the judge's AI interface hours before, nudging perception without detection. Hours later, the final segment began. A live interaction with global leaders, influencers, and celebrities. Contestants were asked unpredictable questions, tested on diplomacy, ethics, and strategy. Celine answered with practiced charm, but each response revealed cracks under pressure. Angela, however, responded with clarity, authority, and tact. Her words carried weight, and her gestures reinforced her image as both intelligent and commanding. By the end of the segment, whispers circulated among backstage staff. Celine might appear to lead, but Angela's influence had begun to dominate. Harrison leaned close, pride flickering in his eyes. "The crown is quietly yours," he murmured. Angela's gaze swept across the arena, scanning audience reactions, judges' expressions, and AI feedback streams. A subtle smile curved her lips. No one sees it yet. No one can. And by the time they do, it will be irreversible. The evening's intermission allowed contestants to retreat briefly, yet Angela did not rest. She moved among her staff, reviewing data feeds, confirming that every manipulation, every subtle intervention had taken effect. The outcome was already unfolding invisibly, as her hidden network of influence steered events toward the destiny she had quietly claimed. Harrison placed a hand on her shoulder. "Soon, everyone will realize who truly earned this victory." Angela's eyes shone with controlled triumph. "They will see only what I allow them to see," she said, her voice a whisper of power. "And by then, the crown will already belong to me." Above the arena, holographic lights shimmered, broadcasting brilliance and spectacle to a world unaware of the quiet, invisible hand shaping the final verdict. Angela Mercer had moved her pieces, planted her influence, and ensured that her victory would be both undeniable and untraceable. The arena lights dimmed, leaving only a radiant glow around the grand stage. Floating holograms shimmered in midair, casting kaleidoscopic reflections across the faces of judges, contestants, and the captivated global audience. The moment had arrived, the final announcement, the culmination of weeks of preparation, strategy, and unseen influence. Angela Mercer stepped forward, her silver gown flowing like liquid starlight, each movement precise, controlled, mesmerizing. Her emerald eyes swept across the audience, aware of every gaze, every thought, every expectation. Publicly, Celine Verne had been the favorite, but Angela had woven a tapestry of influence that no one could detect. Judges, AI adjudicators, and key decision-makers had all been guided subtly toward a single outcome. Backstage, Harrison Vale observed silently, pride evident in the taut line of his jaw. "Are you ready?" he asked, voice low. Angela's lips curved into a faint, confident smile. "I've been ready since the first step on that stage. Now they will see only what I choose." The head judge, A figure adorned in ceremonial robes of techno-gold and crystal cleared his throat. After careful evaluation of all aspects, talent, intellect, composure, influence, and charm, the results of the global beauty and influence competition are... His eyes swept across the contestants. A hush fell over the arena. Millions of viewers held their breath. Celine's confident smile faltered ever so slightly, an imperceptible twitch that only Angela noticed. The world expected her to hear her name called, to step forward in triumph, but the unexpected was about to unfold. The winner, the judge continued, is Angela Mercer. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the arena. Celine blinked, disbelief flickering across her flawless features. Contestants exchanged astonished glances. Holographic feeds captured every reaction, broadcasting a spectacle of surprise worldwide. Angela walked forward, her poise unwavering. Each step was measured, deliberate. She accepted the crown, not with flamboyance, but with a quiet authority that commanded attention. Cameras focused on her serene expression, capturing her grace, intelligence, and subtle triumph. She allowed only a hint of a smile, letting the moment linger without breaking the illusion of calm. Backstage, Celine confronted her privately, voice trembling slightly despite her polished composure. This isn't fair. Everyone thought, Angela's emerald eyes held Celine's gaze, calm yet piercing. Fair, perhaps, but influence, strategy, and presence are far more enduring than fleeting beauty. Victory is never simply about being seen, it's about being understood, subtly, by those who matter. Celine's lips parted, searching for a retort, but Angela turned gracefully, leaving no room for argument. Every step, every gesture, reinforced the perception of her unassailable dominance. The public, initially skeptical, slowly adapted. Analysts dissected her speech, her performance, her gestures. Viewers who had championed Celine began to recognize Angela's quiet authority, her strategic brilliance, her understated charm. It was a triumph not just of beauty, but of intellect and influence. Harrison stepped beside Angela as the crowd erupted in applause. "You've done it," he said softly, admiration clear in his tone. Angela's gaze swept across the arena, then turned upward to the digital sky projecting millions of viewers worldwide. "I did what was necessary," she replied. "They see only the surface, but beneath it everything is mine. And that is the true power of a queen." The crown on her head was more than a symbol of beauty or status. It was a testament to unseen mastery, quiet strategy, and calculated influence. Angela Mercer had not just won a competition. She had reshaped perception, proving that true power was invisible until revealed, subtle until undeniable. As the lights brightened and the applause reached a crescendo, Angela allowed herself a rare, satisfied smile. The competition was over, but the legacy of her authority had only just begun. The glow of the arena still lingered in the city, though the competition had ended. In the quiet corridors of Aurora Citadel, Angela Mercer moved with the grace of a sovereign who knew her victory had been earned, yet understood the crown brought not just admiration, but unseen threats. The applause of millions had faded, but the shadows of rivalry had only begun to stretch. Harrison Vale followed closely, his presence a steady anchor beside her. "You've won the world's eyes," he said quietly, "but rivalries don't end with a crown. Celine is not finished, and others may yet challenge you in ways you cannot predict." Angela's emerald eyes glimmered. "Let them try. Influence is a web. Pull one thread incorrectly, and the whole illusion unravels." Backstage, Celine Verne convened with a small circle of allies, contestants who had felt eclipsed by Angela's subtle brilliance. Their faces were a mixture of envy, frustration, and disbelief. "We were supposed to win," Celine hissed, her platinum hair catching the low light. That woman manipulated everything. We have to find a way to counter her before she consolidates control." While Celine plotted, Angela retreated to a private chamber high above the city, where holographic displays revealed real-time analytics of global sentiment. Every social media feed, every viewer reaction, every subtle shift in perception had been cataloged, studied, and influenced. The Queen had already begun consolidating her authority, not only in the competition, but across politics, media, and society. Harrison approached, voice low but urgent. "Celine and her circle are already mobilizing. If they act quickly, they could disrupt your influence networks or sway public opinion before you cement control." Angela smiled faintly, almost imperceptibly, as if she had anticipated this moment long before it arrived. "Every move they make only reinforces my strategy. Let them plot in shadows. They cannot alter what has already been set in motion." To counter emerging threats, Angela began a series of covert actions. She discreetly strengthened alliances with influential judges, media directors, and political figures, ensuring loyalty through subtle persuasion rather than overt force. Each gesture, compliment, and recommendation was designed to appear organic, yet each carried the weight of calculated influence. Meanwhile, Harrison monitored Celine's activities via private feeds. Angela's rivals attempted to rally public support, leveraging gossip, rumors, and subtle campaigns to undermine her authority. But every attempt was anticipated, every move neutralized by Angela's preemptive networks. She did not confront them directly. Instead, she manipulated perception, guiding observers to see Celine's efforts as disorganized or self-serving, while Angela's own actions appeared natural, fair, and inevitable. That night, Angela ascended to the balcony of her chamber, looking down upon the luminous city. Lights shimmered like stars, drones patrolled the skies, and floating platforms carried citizens through the urban expanse. She exhaled softly, the weight of both crown and responsibility pressing on her shoulders. "Power," she murmured to herself, "is never given. It is cultivated, hidden, and revealed only at the moment of ultimate effect." Harrison joined her silently, his gaze following hers across the city. A message pinged on her private console, a subtle alert from her influence network. Celine's circle had made a move to sway a media channel in their favor, unaware that Angela had already redirected the perception metrics. Smiling faintly, Angela replied internally, "Let them act. Every attempt to challenge me will only serve my final design." The night deepened, yet Angela's vigilance remained unwavering. She was not just a queen, she was a strategist, a master of influence, a subtle orchestrator of perception. While rivals whispered and plotted, unaware of her invisible hand, she solidified her position in silence. In the shadows of victory, Angela Mercer understood a simple truth. Crowns can be challenged, but unseen power is unassailable. And as dawn approached over Aurora Citadel, she prepared for the next phase, a phase where her rivals would confront the undeniable truth of her authority, too late to stop it. Aurora Citadel glimmered under the neon glow of advanced luminescence, the city alive with movement, energy, and whispers of intrigue. Angela Mercer moved through her private corridors with calm precision, each step a silent declaration of authority. Though her victory in the global beauty and influence competition had been revealed, her rivals were far from defeated. Shadows lingered, plotting, scheming, waiting for a misstep. Angela knew she could not rely solely on her crown. She had to tighten the web of influence that ensured her dominance. Harrison Vale flanked her, scanning holographic displays of media channels, AI adjudicators, and social feeds. "Celine Zhu, allies have begun making bold moves," he said quietly. "They're attempting to manipulate public opinion, framing her loss as a scandal and challenging the legitimacy of your victory." Angela's emerald eyes flicked toward him, sharp and calculating. "Let them try. Every attempt to challenge me will only reveal the strength of the unseen hand guiding perception. She allowed a faint smile, knowing her adversary's frustration would only deepen the more futile their efforts became. In the public eye, Celine had called for interviews and press conferences, attempting to rally support. She spoke with practiced poise, but cracks in her composure betrayed her desperation. Audiences perceived her words as defensive, even insecure. Angela, on the other hand, appeared poised, serene, and confident in every broadcast, every statement, every gesture. Her influence was no longer hidden. It radiated subtly, compelling observers to reassess loyalty and admiration. Backstage, Angela convened with her inner circle of trusted aides, each one strategically placed during the competition. Their task was simple: ensure all attempts to sway perception away from Angela were neutralized quietly, invisibly. A message blinked across her console. Celine's team had tried to leak manipulated statistics of audience reactions. Angela adjusted the analytics in real time, not to punish, but to reframe the narrative, making the attempted manipulation appear as an unintentional anomaly. Meanwhile, Celine grew increasingly frantic, her calculated charm faltering under pressure. She confronted Angela in a private chamber, the tension almost palpable. "This isn't over," Celine said, her voice low but sharp. "You may have won the stage, but influence isn't absolute. I can still challenge you." Angela's emerald gaze met hers, unflinching. "Influence is invisible, yet it is everywhere. You may see my hands, but you cannot see the currents guiding every perception, every thought. You are already entangled in the web, Celine. By the time you realize it, victory will be undeniable." Celine's lips parted, searching for a retort, but Angela did not wait for her reply. She turned, each movement deliberate, radiating the calm power of one who knew. The battlefield had already been mapped and controlled. Harrison followed silently, aware that every action Angela took was a strategic maneuver, each gesture reinforcing dominance and shaping perception. The night progressed, and Angela extended her influence beyond competitors. She reached into global networks, engaging with political leaders, media directors, and influencers. Every conversation, every suggestion, every subtle nudge strengthened her position, reinforcing the narrative of her legitimacy and authority. By the early hours, Celine's attempts had grown desperate. Rumors of scandals, whispers of unfair judging, and manipulated data streams attempted to sway the public. Yet Angela's silent network, her unseen orchestration, ensured that each move backfired subtly. Observers noted inconsistencies, and Celine's credibility waned without anyone realizing the Queen's quiet intervention. Angela finally paused on a balcony overlooking the city, the neon lights casting reflections in her emerald eyes. Harrison stood beside her, sensing the culmination of a long night. "They will soon understand," he said softly. Angela's gaze swept across Aurora Citadel, serene yet resolute. "Let them realize it when the moment is unavoidable," she murmured. "Power is strongest when it is unseen, until it is undeniable, and that moment is approaching." Above the luminous city, the web she had woven grew tighter, invisible threads connecting perception, influence, and authority. Rivals struggled, their struggles only affirming Angela Mercer's mastery. The Queen was no longer merely a victor. In a competition, she was a sovereign of influence, strategy, and perception, poised to claim absolute dominance in ways the world had yet to recognize. Aurora Citadel glimmered like a jewel suspended in the sky, a city of steel, neon, and holographic light. Angela Mercer moved through the grand corridors of her palace with the assuredness of a queen who had not only won a competition but was now shaping the future of her world. Victory on stage had been only the first step. Real power required consolidation, foresight, and control. Harrison Vale flanked her as they entered the strategic chamber, a room lined with holographic maps, floating panels of intelligence, and live feeds from across the 7 regions Angela sought to unify. "Your public victory is secure," he said, voice low, "but unrest brews in other territories. Several governors are testing boundaries, curious whether your influence extends beyond the competition." Angela's emerald eyes flickered across the projections, noting alliances, loyalties, and subtle shifts in perception. "Let them test," she murmured, her voice calm yet carrying the weight of authority. "Every action they take will only confirm my reach if guided correctly." Her first move was the integration of local leadership networks. Governors, civic leaders, and influential technocrats were subtly courted, their loyalties reinforced through small acts of personal engagement. A private message here, a discreet favor there, and each leader felt an authentic connection to Angela, not as a distant queen, but as a strategist whose insight promised stability and prosperity. Meanwhile, subtle public demonstrations showcased Angela's multifaceted talents. She appeared at cultural ceremonies, humanitarian initiatives, and technological unveilings, each event meticulously orchestrated to reflect both charisma and competence. Social feeds, AI perception models, and global networks amplified her every gesture, subtly shaping the narrative that Angela Mercer was both beloved and indispensable. Yet consolidation was not without challenge. Whispered dissent reached her through unofficial channels, rivals who had survived the competition, minor factions of citizens resistant to rapid unification, and rogue media personalities attempting to undermine her authority. Angela did not confront them directly. Instead, she leveraged perception management, highlighting collaborative achievements, demonstrating transparency, and orchestrating events to make dissent appear misguided or out of touch. Harrison observed, impressed by the precision of her maneuvers. "They will either bend to your influence or fade into irrelevance," he noted. Angela's lips curved into a faint smile. "Influence is a river, Harrison. It flows quietly, shaping every bank it touches. Resistance is merely a temporary eddy. It cannot stop the current." During a late-night session in her strategy chamber, Angela activated a series of covert intelligence measures. Drones patrolled urban sectors, AI surveillance monitored potential threats, and predictive algorithms identified emerging dissension. Yet she framed these actions as benevolent oversight, protection, guidance, and engagement, ensuring that loyalty was cultivated through admiration rather than fear. Unexpectedly, a message blinked on her interface. A coordinated faction from 3 distant regions was plotting to resist her unification efforts, potentially aligning with Celine Verne's remaining network. Angela's gaze sharpened. "They seek to test the web," she said softly. "Very well. Let us see how they respond to precision." Harrison leaned closer, tension in his voice. "Direct intervention could expose your hand. Are you certain?" Angela's eyes glimmered with quiet determination. Directness is unnecessary. Influence, when applied subtly, shapes action without revealing intention. They will act according to my design, believing it is their own choice, while I secure my throne. Over the following weeks, Angela implemented a series of psychological and political maneuvers. Public ceremonies highlighted her benevolence and competence. Strategic communications reinforced unity across regions. Every rival move was anticipated, reframed, and redirected, reinforcing the perception that Angela's authority was both legitimate and inevitable. By the end of the month, the 3 rebellious regions had realigned, their governors and leaders quietly acknowledging Angela's supremacy. Celine Verne's influence waned further, her whispers of dissent drowned by the tide of Angela's perception mastery. Standing once more on the balcony overlooking Aurora Citadel, Angela allowed herself a moment to breathe. Below, the city shimmered. With life and energy, its citizens unaware of the invisible threads guiding their admiration, respect, and loyalty. Harrison watched her silently, knowing the queen before him was more than a victor. She was a master of strategy, perception, and authority. Angela's voice, soft yet resolute, carried over the luminous city. The crown was never the goal. Influence is, and now, every region, every mind, every action bends to the quiet, inevitable truth. Angela Mercer rules. Above the city, the neon lights shimmered like a living network of her unseen influence, extending outward, weaving certainty, loyalty, and power across every corner of her growing dominion. The queen had not only won a competition, she had secured a legacy. The war room of the Eidolon was a symphony of controlled chaos. Tactical maps flickered across the curved wall, glowing crimson where enemy fleets had been sighted. Around the central holotable, officers argued in clipped, overlapping bursts, each voice sharpened by urgency. Kalen stood at the table's edge, silent, eyes fixed on the shifting patterns of light. He wasn't listening to the noise so much as feeling it, the pulse of unease beneath every word. The war wasn't going well, not anymore. Since the Battle of Mornhall Rift, the coalition had been unraveling thread by thread. Supply convoys failed to arrive. Patrols returned with only half their crews. Entire outposts had gone dark without warning, swallowed by the enemy's sudden and brutal counterstrikes. And now, this. "The Varathi delegation has walked out of the summit," Admiral Sorrell said flatly, not looking up from her datapad. "They've officially suspended their military commitments, effective immediately." A ripple of curses spread through the room. Kalen's jaw tightened. "We can't hold the front without Varathi ships." "They control the Mantara Gate." "They know that," Sorrell replied, her eyes hard. "Which is exactly why they're doing it." The holomap shifted again, zooming in on the Mantara sector, a bright arterial route between human-controlled space and the deep frontier. Without the Varathi fleets guarding it, the path lay open to the enemy's vanguard. "They claim the war is unwinnable," said Commander Raylan from the far side of the table. "That continuing to fight will only bring annihilation to their homeworlds." "Annihilation is coming whether they fight or not," Kalen said, finally stepping forward. His voice cut through the room like a drawn blade. "You all know this. The enemy doesn't want territory, they don't want negotiation, they want erasure." There was a long silence after that. Even the sound of the holoprojectors seemed distant, but beneath his anger, Kalen felt something colder, something worse. Doubt, because the Varathi weren't fools. They were survivors. If they believed the war was lost, was it possible they were right? The thought itched at the back of his mind as the meeting dissolved into shouted orders and emergency contingency plans. Officers rushed to secure fallback positions, reroute convoys, and dispatch envoys to other wavering allies. By the time Kalen left the war room, the corridors of the Eidolon were buzzing with rumor. Crew members spoke in hushed tones. Some glanced at him, then looked away quickly. News traveled fast aboard a ship this size. The scent of fear lingered in the recycled air. He walked until the noise fell away, finding himself in the starboard observation bay. Beyond the glass stretched the cold black ocean of space, scattered with faraway suns. He thought of the faces of his crew, of the allies who still stood with them, of the Varathi packing up their fleets and sealing their gates. And somewhere, beyond all that, waiting, patient, the enemy moved like a shadow stretching across the stars. He did not know if the coalition would survive another month, but he knew this. Fractured or not, he would not stop. Not while there was anything left worth protecting. The enemy had stolen much already. They would not take his resolve. The rain had not stopped for 3 days. It hissed against the hulls of grounded ships, sluiced down the jagged remains of shattered towers, and pooled in the craters where entire neighborhoods had been erased. It carried the smell of metal, ozone, and something older, like the memory of fire that refused to die. John walked through the ruin with his rifle slung low, his boots splashing in puddles that reflected the flicker of distant fires. Each step felt heavier than the last, as though the rain itself was trying to pull him down into the mud and keep him there. His comm crackled every few seconds, bursts of static followed by brief updates from scattered survivors. Sarah's voice, finally, broke through the interference. "John, you're close. Beacon's about 100 meters east. Watch the rooftops. Movement's been spotted." He didn't need her warning. The rooftops were jagged silhouettes, and shadows shifted there in ways the rain couldn't explain. He slowed his breathing, scanning the wreckage, finger brushing the trigger. The beacon site came into view, a small plaza, or what was left of one. The central fountain was cracked in half, its sculpted figures headless and worn. In its place, a blackened column of alloy jutted from the ground, cables snaking from it into the rubble like veins feeding a dying heart. The beacon's faint pulse, a steady rhythmic flash, threw long wet reflections across the broken stone, but it wasn't alone. 4 figures stood around it, motionless in the downpour. Their armor was slick black, their visors a dull, menacing red. They looked like statues until one slowly tilted its head toward John, as if sending him through the storm. He moved before thought could catch up, sliding behind the husk of a collapsed transport, water dripping down his neck. He could feel their gaze even from cover, the same oppressive weight he'd felt on the battlefield weeks ago. These weren't scouts. They were hunters. A memory flashed unbidden, soldiers screaming in the streets of Arethas, the same armor moving through smoke, cutting them down with mechanical precision. John forced it away, refocusing. "Sarah," he whispered into the comm, "I've got Black Legion at the beacon." Her reply came after a beat too long. "Then it's worse than we thought. You have to hold them, no matter what, that beacon. It's the last one linking us to the orbital fleet." The rain masked his approach as he moved along the wreckage, calculating the angle. One wrong move and those crimson visors would lock onto him, and there'd be no second chance. Lightning tore the sky open above, illuminating the scene for a single, breathless instant. He saw their weapons, sleek, angular, not human. And he saw something else. One of them wasn't armored the same. Its plating was deeper black, its frame bulkier, and the light behind its visor pulsed slowly like a heartbeat. It wasn't just a hunter. It was leading them. John exhaled, steadying his aim. Somewhere in the storm he swore he heard the faintest hum of a voice, not from the comm but from them, like a machine whispering in a language not meant for human ears. He squeezed the trigger. The plaza erupted in gunfire, muzzle flashes strobing against the rain, and just like that, the hunters moved. The city was gone, not burning, not crumbling, gone. Where once stood the sprawl of marble spires, humming rail lines, and the labyrinth of neon-lit markets, there was only a flattened wasteland of blackened glass and curling smoke. The air reeked of scorched stone and iron, a scent so heavy it clung to the back of the throat like dust from a tomb. The horizon shimmered with the heat of what had been, like the ghost of a mirage refusing to admit it was dead. Elias stood at the edge of the crater, boots crunching on brittle shards of what had once been a temple's facade. He said nothing. Words seemed absurd in the face of this. Even the wind was mute here, like the world itself had swallowed its breath. The survivors, if they could be called that, huddled in the distance. A handful of trembling silhouettes wrapped in torn cloaks, their faces hollowed by hunger and, something far worse, the quiet resignation that hope was a currency they could no longer afford. Their eyes followed Elias, not because they recognized him, but because he was still moving when everything else had stopped. Kalen limped up beside him, his side bandaged from the skirmish in the dunes. "They hit harder than we thought," he rasped, staring into the expanse. "Whole sectors, wiped clean in seconds." Elias didn't answer. His mind replayed the moment they'd received the intercepted signal, a false surrender broadcast from the enemy. meant to draw the defenders back into the heart of the city. By the time Elias realized it was bait, it was too late. The orbital strikes had already begun. Behind him, Juno was picking her way through the rubble. She was holding something. Elias turned to see it. A small melted charm, a child's trinket, a crude little sun made of brass and colored glass. She didn't speak, but her eyes brimmed with the weight of a story neither of them would ever hear in full. A deep, low vibration rolled through the ground. Not thunder, not a quake. "They're still out there," Kalen said, scanning the gray horizon. "Finishing what they started." Elias clenched his jaw. "Not while I'm still breathing." Kalen looked at him, a flicker of dark amusement in his eyes. "That's not the problem, Captain. It's how many of us will still be breathing when it's over." The wind shifted then, carrying with it the distant, inhuman roar of the enemy, a sound not made by vocal cords, but by some deep war engine amplified through 1,000 hulls of black steel. It vibrated in the ribs, a sound designed to remind every living thing of its own fragility. Elias stepped forward into the crater. The ground was warm like a dying ember refusing to go cold. He knelt, pressing his palm into the scorched earth, and swore quietly, so quietly that only the ruins could hear. "They want us erased," he murmured. But history doesn't forget those who fight to their last breath. When he rose, something had changed in his face. It wasn't hope. Hope was too fragile, too naive for this place. It was resolve, the kind that came when you had nothing left to lose but the fight itself. He turned to his crew, voice carrying over the silent wasteland. "We're done reacting. No more waiting for them to strike. From here on, we take the fight to them, on our terms." The survivors behind him stirred. Not much, but enough. A head lifted here, a fist clenched there. They were listening, far. Above in the ashen sky, the faint outline of the enemy's warships drifted like carrion birds, circling their prize. They thought the city was dead. They thought the fire had burned out. They were wrong.